Listen to me, but I wanted to take just a moment and thank everybody who's listening today. What you do day in and day out, in support of people with developmental and intellectual disabilities is truly incredible. The needs of community still continue to grow and raise. And it just makes such a huge difference. And this provider directory, although I realize some folks may consider it a cuss word, is a major step forward in the infrastructure we have to support people. It's how we communicate with our service providers, how we expand their capacity and grow. And so I want to thank my team at the department and the users who've helped develop what you're going to see today and everybody who bears with us as we birth new processes. Change is a little bit hard. We all know that. We appreciate people persevering, but there are some really great things ahead that the team will show you today. And we just are really super grateful for everybody's partnership here. I am going to go out on a limb and say that the participant count today may be very close to a department record. So we're really grateful for the interest and experience that everybody is going to have with us today. So thank you. Thank you for everything that you do for our community day in and day out. And because some of you won't see me before then, I'll wish everybody now a happy holiday to wrap up 2025 as well. Yasser, back to you, sir. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Pete. So let's go to the next slide, please. All right. So the provider directory, we'll start with just a real quick high-level overview of the provider directory for, given this is being recorded and prospective vendors in the future may view this, or folks on here today may not know what the provider directory is. It's really just a quick high-level background. If you go to the next slide. Provider directory was basically established in October of 2024. It's an essential mechanism. The directory is to get, which helps the department gather service provider information into a centralized system. So prior to the provider directory, there wasn't a centralized system to track the providers across the state across various services. We knew how many providers we had, but this really enhances that, and we know which areas of the state providers are located and providing services. And so that's the reason the provider directory was developed, or the phase one of provider directory was developed, and to make the data easier and also to be developed in phases. So phase one was the original provider directory. Phase two, we're launching here tomorrow, December 3rd, which is going to incorporate the standardized vendorization process. So why is it important? It's really, it's going to basically be helpful for individuals and families that are looking for services. And basically, when we have the data for the state and where providers are geographically, we'll be able to map that out for families and individuals seeking services, and also be able to see where in those rural areas there is a need for services and what type of services are needed. Additionally, with QIP, Quality Incentive Program payments, the data driven from the provider directory is going to establish payments in the future for QIP and also inform the reimbursement rates. Next slide. So let's get into the launch of the standardized vendorization. So how did we get here today? So next slide. The background. So let's start with the background. SB 138, Senate Bill 138, the section listed here, 4435.1E, established a standardized vendorization process for all regional centers across the state. And so what the department did about a year ago, we began work on standardizing the vendorization process. We had a group of service providers and also regional centers to learn about vendorization and how it was done today across the state. The need for standardization, obviously, because the vendorization process was being done differently across the state amongst the regional centers. And so in order to standardize that, and modernize the experience for the applicant, and have it, not only digital in the provider directory, but have one way of coming into the system itself. That's really why the vendorization process was standardized. And what vendorization, for anyone that doesn't know or wants to become a vendor, it's basically a check by the regional centers how a service provider, if the service provider is qualified and ready to offer services. So once a service provider is determined to be qualified, goes through the vendor application process, they are assigned a vendor number and a service code by the regional center. Each regional center that approves the service is the vendoring regional center. And then there are also user regional centers which utilize that vendor and their services once they're already vendored. And so that process is now being incorporated into the provider directory, and all of those checks will occur in the provider directory by the regional center once the applicant starts the process or establishes a case. And like I mentioned, so why is it being standardized? Really to reduce variation in how providers became vendored across the state. There's a lot of variations today. It's a manual method, right? And then when we talk about regional centers, having user vendorizations, that is also a manual method. A lot of times there's a lot of time goes by from just tracking down different documents. So once those documents are all in the provider directory, they're going to be easily accessible by the regional centers, and it's going to make becoming vendored with multiple regional centers easier and more streamlined. Also, it increases the consistency and transparency across the board. So, next slide. So how we got here, some of the accomplishments, just want to, give a big shout out to regional centers and service providers. We held almost 2 meetings every month with regional centers to learn about their current practices and how vendorization works across the regional centers over the last year. We also had a small group of service providers we worked with to learn what difficulties they face today in vendorization during that process. We also held demo and trainings of the new provider directory that you're going to see here shortly that Marie will be demoing. We've provided plenty of trainings, and also we've created step-by-step guides that are there are 2 guides, one for service providers, which is posted on our website as of this morning. It's the new service guide for the provider directory. And then we also have a regional center service guide that is being sent out to the regional centers on how their provider directory screens are going to work on their end, the dashboard, and all of the steps. Additionally, we created we asked the regional centers to create 21 email addresses for each of their regional centers. So each regional center has a designated or a dedicated vendorization at their regional center inbox. And the department did the same. We have now a vendorization at dds.ca.gov inbox. These inboxes are meant for all the notifications that come from the provider directory to go to these dedicated inboxes. And also questions from the community regarding vendorization will go to those inboxes as well. Lastly, we also established a new vendorization webpage at the department, which is now live as of this morning. We will share that link with you all. There are also FAQs about the new process there and additional resources available as well. Along with that, the regional centers are also working on updating their web pages, and I'll get to that towards the end of the presentation. Next slide.
Yasser, it's Pete. I'm just going to interject for just a second. If our team's supporting this, there are a number of people asking for the live stream link so that their coworkers can join the event. If that can be provided, please. Thanks. Sorry, Yasser.
No problem. Thank you, Pete. So getting into the actual work that we did with standardizing vendorization. So on this graphic here, you'll see 4 steps or stages, as we call them, in the vendorization process. This document is on our webpage. And again, we'll share that with you all towards the end of the presentation. The first step or stage in the new vendorization process is creating that profile for the service provider directory. In the provider directory, if you're already an existing vendor, you will not need to do this first step. So you already have an account. If you're coming in brand new, trying to become a service provider for the state of in the state of California, you'll want to create a profile first. Once you have established a profile in the provider directory, stage two is a requirements form that is driven off of some of the important information that's required for the regional centers to determine if a vendor is qualified to provide services. So basically a streamlined version of the 1890 and 1891 to basically it's a single pager online. The provider would come in, fill out those requirements. Then the regional center would check to see if the provider meets those requirements. If they do, the regional center would create a checklist for the service provider to fill out the application online and complete the remaining checklist, which is the submission stage number 3. So once you receive the checklist in submission stage, that's what is equivalent to today's application stage. The service provider would go through the checklist, complete the 1890, 1891, both are online now, and provide all of the documents, license, program design, your W-9, right? So all of the pertinent information that's required today, it would all be uploaded into the provider directory. Once the provider marks their case as complete, and we'll have screenshots to, Mari's going to go through this in detail. Once that is complete, your application gets moved into the decision stage where the regional center makes a determination on your vendorization. So those are the 4 distinct stages that we've created. Next slide. This graphic here really talks about the timelines associated with the application process. One thing I'll mention here is this process. So it's a moving forward. So as the provider directory soft launch begins December 3rd, tomorrow, right? Any new vendor coming into the system moving forward would be, their documents would be in the provider directory. If you're an existing vendor and you were vendored outside of the provider directory, whether that was 5 years ago or maybe last month and you were vendored, your documents are obviously outside of the provider directory. There will be a process and a timeline established by the department for regional centers to bring those vendors into the provider directory in the near future. So walking through this graphic here, the first box there, the 15 days for the requirements, that's the second stage in the 4-stage process. Once the service provider submits the requirements form, the regional center has 15 days to review and determine if you're eligible for moving into that submission stage or not. If you're eligible, and these are calendar days, and so once you are determined to be eligible from the requirement stage, you are basically moved into the submission stage where a checklist is established by the regional center. Service provider has that checklist. They can go through and basically if they decide they want to move forward, they will fill out all of the 1890, 1891 online, along with provide all of the required documents in the checklist. There's no timeline in that state, so the service provider has as much time as needed to make that determination if they want to move forward with their vendorization and gather all their documents. Once the service provider submits everything to the regional center in the middle of the screen there in that submission stage has 30 days to review the application and documents. If any of the documents are missing or incomplete, the regional center would send that case back to the service provider. The clock would pause at that time and only unpause once the service provider resubmits those missing or incomplete documents, and the service provider would have 30 days, like the regional center, to provide those documents. Once the process is completed and moved into the decision stage, the regional center has 45 days to render a decision and also assign a service code and vendor ID number. Next slide. Now, speaking to the implementation plan. So the department released a directive on November 14th. The link is here in the PowerPoint. We will be posting this PowerPoint and the recording online. We'll also drop the links to the directive and the new webpage in the Q&A. The directive also has a website requirement for regional centers, like I mentioned earlier. Similar to the new vendorization, how to become a service provider vendorization page on the department's website. Regional centers will be required to also have a how to become a service provider page on their websites. Part of that link there that will be provided is a template. So that way we have a standardized information across all 21 regional centers how somebody can become vendored and the timelines themselves. Part of the directive gave a few different timelines as far as implementation. So December 3rd, tomorrow, vendorization portal within the provider directory goes live. It is a soft launch, meaning that the mandatory implementation begins March 1, 2026. Now, that 3-month gap there allows regional centers, service providers, right, and the department to really test out the provider directory and fix any bugs or anything that may show up in the next 3 months. So we've gone through a rigorous amount of testing. The provider directory is ready to go. We've minimized any kind of issues that may come up. But as you know, with the hundreds and thousands of folks coming in through the directory, if anything was to come up, that period there allows us time to clean up anything that may need to be done. Now, March 1, 2026, all vendorizations would begin in the directory except for purchase reimbursement. Purchase reimbursement, service code 024, makes up roughly 50% of the vendorizations across the state. And so majority of those are families and social recreation service code services are under that purchase reimbursement. So we're allowing a little bit more time to test this out with more seasoned providers before moving this over to where families and that really utilize that purchase reimbursement vendorization come in July 1, 2026. The other item excluded from the provider directory is self-determination program, SDP. So SDP is excluded from provider directory for the exception of the 3 FMS service codes, 315, 316, and 317. Those FMS codes will go into the provider directory. Other than that, the remaining service codes for SDP will not be in the provider directory. And one thing I'll note here, beginning December 3rd, regional centers, part of the website requirement, each regional center is required to have a plan of implementation. And so I would highly recommend during this soft launch of the 3 months, from December 3rd through March 1, to check with your vendoring regional center on which services they're allowing to come through the provider directory. That plan is going to be on each regional center's website. And then beginning March 1, all regional centers and all services, for the exception of SDP and purchase reimbursement, will begin. Next slide. So now I'm going to hand it over to Marie Wecker. She's our community program specialist. She's going to be providing the demo of the vendorization portal.
Thank you, Yasser. Welcome, everyone. As Yasser said, I am Marie, and I will be giving an overview of the service provider portal and standardized vendorization today. Can I get the next slide, please? First, we are going to get familiar with the provider directory dashboard and how to navigate it. Next slide. When you log into your service provider portal, you will land on the provider directory dashboard. Those of you who have never been vendorized can find the link to register for the provider directory and create a username and password on your regional center's website or on the Department of Developmental Services How to Become a Vendor page. You can also find the training guide for step-by-step instruction on the DDS website. On the next slide, we will focus on how to navigate the provider directory dashboard. Next slide, please. At the top, you will find Home, My Vendorizations, and Provider Support. If you click on Home, it will return you to the dashboard wherever you're at. If you click on My Vendorizations, you will see all your vendor numbers and their information. It will have all your vendor numbers and information on them. Finally, if you click on Provider Support, this is where you can add, remove, or change access roles to users. We will go into more detail later. Next slide. A new feature is the quick links. You can click on each of these and you will go directly to the option, which includes My Request, where you can check the status of a new vendorization or a request to update or change existing vendor information. You can click on Regional Center Lookup if you are unsure of which regional center catchment area you are wanting to provide services in. When you click on Vendor Provider Information, it will take you directly to the Provider Directory homepage on the DDS website. And PD User Management will take you to Provider Support that we discussed a little in the last slide. Next slide. This slide highlights provider services where you can update your vendor information, apply for a new vendorization, and the provider support. You can also go to My Requests where you can find the status for all your requests. Next slide. The PD User Management, where we will look closer on how to add, remove, and change access roles. Next slide. You can get to user management a few ways, either by clicking on Provider Support, Provider Services, or using the quick link PD User Management. You will also see all your vendor records with associated information, such as vendor name and service location in My Vendor Records underneath the provider service. In later slides, we will be going over the standardized vendorization, and as you add new services, you will see them here. You can also click on the vendor number and see all the information associated with that vendor. Next slide. Once you click on one of the options, you will see this page, which will already have a PD provider admin populated. This will be the user who initially registered for the provider directory. The PD provider admin can add, remove, and change access roles for anyone. You can have up to 2 provider admins. This role must always have at least 1 member. The PD read-only role can see all the information in your portal, but cannot take any actions. You can have up to 10 members in this role. And finally, we have the PD change requester, who can update, edit vendor information, and apply for vendorization. You can have up to 15 members in this role. Next slide. When you click on the Add button, a simple form will pop up for you to either add, keep, or remove access. You will need to enter the first and last name, which access role you are giving or changing, and their email address. The organization title is optional. Again, you can find the step-by-step training guide on DDS, How to Become a Vendor page. Next slide. The next slides will be an overview of provider services. Next slide. The first step is to click on Provider Services, where you will have 3 options. Next slide. The first option is to apply for vendorization, where new and existing providers can apply for initial and additional vendorizations. Next slide. The next option is a new option. It's where you can view and or update parent organization information, where existing providers can view and request updates to the parent organization record. Next slide. The last option is vendor update record, view and update vendor record. You can view and request updates to the vendor record. Just a quick overview, minor changes that are made, which can include contact number, contact person, or contact email, will automatically be approved through the system, and the case will be closed and your record updated. Major changes will have to go to the regional center for approval or a rejection with more information needed. Those areas are a change in vendor name, a change in applicant, owner, or executive, change in name of governing body, change of name registered with the Secretary of State, change of organization type, change of federal tax ID or social security number, change in any of the service location, including street, city, state, zip code, and county, change in the mailing, including street, city, state, zip code, or county, change in license and certifications, and change in facility capacity. Changes cannot be made to regional center, vendoring regional center, or service codes. Next slide. This is an example of a vendor record to be updated. You can see all your information and click on Update Vendorization at the bottom. You then can make any changes necessary and submit. Once again, you can find the step-by-step training guide on DDS How to Become a Vendor page. Next slide. How to apply for vendorization. Next slide. After registering for the service provider directory that we went over earlier, you can sign into your portal, click Provider Services, and then click on Apply for Vendorization. You will land on this page to begin the vendorization process. As a reminder, the Regional Center has 15 days to determine if the service provider has the minimum requirements to be vendored for the service they want to provide from the day the service provider submits the application. Then the regional centers have 30 days to gather the information they need to determine whether to vendor the service provider. But anytime the regional center needs more information from the service provider, the clock pauses. It does not reset until the information is sent from the service provider. Note that 30 days, the service provider has 30 days to get the information to the regional center. If they don't get it within 30 days, they can opt to close that case, and the process will have to start over again. The pause happens anytime new information is requested. Once they have determined that they are going to vendorize, or once they have all the information they need, it will go into the decision stage. The regional center will then have 45 days to make a decision whether to vendorize the service provider. They can request more information in this stage, but the clock does not pause. Next slide. On the left, you can see the activities for the requirement. As we are not showing the full application itself, we will review each section. Welcome to Vendorization Process has some information and a link to the vendorization process. If you are a brand new service provider, we strongly suggest you review before beginning the application to assist with step-by-step instructions and answer any potential questions you may have about completing the application. The next step is to classify your case. Is this a new service, a new location in the same catchment area, a new location in a different catchment area? So you would click on which one applies to you. Select the Vendoring Regional Center. This is where the vendoring, the regional lookup tool will come in handy, especially if you're in one of the more populated areas, like LA, where there are a lot of regional centers in a small area. You will put the address in, and it will verify which regional center you should be submitting your form to. Next, we have vendor applicant information. This includes applicant name, name of governing body, name registered with the Secretary of State, telephone number, website if available, entity type, tax ID or Social Security number, category of service, and type of service to be provided. The type of service to be provided is where you're going to have a chance to go into detail what service you want to provide and how you're going to provide it. The more information you can give the regional center, the smoother the transaction can go. They won't have to ask for more information. So that's your area to really let them know the service that you want to provide. Next is the address information. The address for a site-based program would be where you are serving the individuals. Non-site based is where the main office or primary location is located. Next, we have licenses and certifications. This is where if maybe you're a day program, you can attach the community care licensing. Maybe you have a degree and you want to provide therapy. You would add all of these in this section and then submit your request. Next slide. If you're an existing service provider, you can choose to pre-fill your data form from an existing vendorization. This will autofill with the regional center based on the address, vendor applicant information, and address information. You can still go in and edit these. Next slide. Once you've completed the requirements, submitted it to the regional center, they will look at the information provided and determine whether you meet the minimum requires to be vendored for the service you are requesting. An automated email will be sent either approving request to apply for vendorization or a denial email letting you know you did not meet the minimum requirements. If you are approved to move on, your case will be created. Once your case has been created, you can communicate with your regional center one of three ways. You can send messages through the portal along with attachments. You can email or you can call. Although you can communicate with the regional center in several ways, all information must be processed through the provider directory. You can go to My Requests and check on the status, including activity. Any step or communication that has been done will show up here. As you can see on this slide, it has timers on it and what has been sent. Next slide. You can click on attachments and see any that you have sent or received here. Next slide. If you click on process, you will see where you are currently in the vendorization process. Here we can see that we're at the vendorization checklist in the submission stage. Next slide. Here you can see by the arrows. Oh, next slide, please. Okay. Here you can see by the arrows that you are now in the submission stage. Next. And the process is in the vendorization checklist. Let's look at the submission stage activities. This is where you will do most of the back and forth with the regional center. Additional information will include facility capacity, consultants, subcontractor, and community resource types to be used by the vendor. Birth date and language of service is delivered. The checklist is created by the regional center and specific to the type of service you are requesting to provide. If any of the required forms are unfamiliar or you are unsure where to locate the fillable template, contact your vendoring regional center for guidance before proceeding. Do not request the vendor application DS 1890 and applicant vendor disclosure statement DS 1891. They will be generated and signed as part of the vendorization process. Next slide. Once you complete the vendorization checklist, you will click on yes and mark it complete. It is now with the regional center to make their decision. Next slide. If denied, an email will be sent with detail as to why the vendorization was denied. It will have the regional center contact information if you have any questions. If you are approved, you will receive an email with the vendor number and service code. It may also have subcodes, facility capacity, and rate information included. It would also have the RC contact information if you have any questions or needs. If you are approved for vendorization by the regional center, a new vendor record will be automatically completed and uploaded into your provider directory portal. And it will look like this. You will be able to log into your portal to see the information and access to make any changes needed either now or in the future. That completes the overview of the provider directory portal and standardized vendorization. I will turn it back over to Yasser. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie. And if we can go to the next slide. So just a quick reminder, I know we've shared a lot today. This has been recorded, and also the PowerPoint deck, both the recording and the PowerPoint deck is going to be posted on our website. What you see on the screen right now is a list of some resources that are on our webpage. So if folks can, there we go. Kathy just put the link to the new webpage, the vendorization process, in the chat. If folks want to visit our webpage, it is live now. You can find the how to become a vendor webpage that is live. There's also a step-by-step provider guide that has been updated. It is in the related links off to the right side on the page. At the very bottom of the page, you will find FAQs, the frequently asked questions. We will be using the Q&A today to update those frequently asked questions. So you will definitely see an updated version in the coming weeks. There's also stages of vendorization and application process and timeline documents in the related links on our webpage under the related links off to the right there. So those are the documents that we shared earlier in the presentation. But if you want to revisit those and there are more details there, you can definitely take a look at that. Next slide. In closing, and one other note, I just want to mention in the chat, we also added the directive. So if anybody has not seen the directive that went out on November 14th, you can find that link in the chat as well. So how to get or share information, just in closing, just want to remind folks, one quick note, so the soft launch begins December 3rd, tomorrow, with the mandatory vendorizations in PD on March 1. During this 3-month period, please check with your vendoring regional center on where to begin, as regional centers will have their own implementation plan for these 3 months. They'll likely introduce a subset of service codes that will begin in the provider directory for vendorization. And if there are any questions during the vendorization process, please check with your vendoring regional center. If there are any questions, or if you'd like to provide feedback about the standardized vendorization presentation that you saw today, please feel free to email the vendorization@dds.ca.gov inbox. We look forward to hearing from you. That feedback is going to further enhance this provider directory. Like I mentioned, this is happening in phases. So this is phase 2. In future iterations, we look forward to your feedback so we can further improve and incorporate additional things into the provider directory. And if you have technical questions or any issues with the provider directory, you're logged out, password reset, those sorts of questions, please direct those to provider directory@dds.ca.gov. Again, just want to thank everyone for attending this presentation today. A big thanks to all the regional centers, the service providers in our work group sessions. It's been a lot of work for the team over the last year, but this is a great enhancement to the original provider directory. We hope you're all excited, just as we are, to modernize the vendorization process. For those that joined us in the overflow on YouTube, please feel free to use the vendorization@dds inbox to send your feedback. So with that, hope you all have a great holiday season. Look forward to hearing from you, and